Welcome back to another episode. I've tried to record this twice and the microphone thing fell out and then my iPhone also ran out of battery. So going well already this morning. So today's episode is all about why you need to be doing this by yourself in the future. Now, I've had a big bugbear with this for a long time, so maybe it's my frustrations, maybe I haven't eaten this morning or whatever it is, but it's really important. For the last 10 years, I've been a personal trainer and I've saw clients work with other PTs for 3, 5, 6 years. And I never understood why. And obviously the usual classic answers are, I just like the accountability, it makes me go to the gym 3 days a week, or those weekly check-ins make me stay on plan with my nutrition this week. And I'm thinking, you're 5 years into practicing the skills of nutrition, training, exercise, because it's a skill-based game, that's what it is. But yet you still need someone to make you do it. And I never really understood that, because innately for me, when I was starting this journey, I always thought people should be able to do it by themselves. Let me just check if my camera's on. Yeah, we good. Innately, I thought, well, I want to do it by myself. I don't want to have a coach forever, and I'm a personal trainer. And why should anybody else be different? A personal trainer doesn't need anybody to help them go to the gym or follow their nutrition to stay in shape forever. Maybe for competition prep, maybe for photo shoots, maybe for that type of shit. It does. But there is an element of PTs get to do it by themselves. People that have very, very vested interest into their fitness get to do it by themselves. So why are these general population working with clients or coaches for 3, 5, 7 years just to do the things that the coaches are doing by themselves as well? And then you recognize that it feeds into the whole thing of paying for your mortgage. And if you've got a client for 3 years or 5 years, £200 a month or £100 a session times by 3 sessions a week for 5 years is a fucking shit ton of money for a PT and a consistent earner. It's a money bank. You know they're going to be there 3 times a week. It's great. When I was a PT, they're your best clients because they're going to be there 3 times a week, hell, rain, wind or shine for 5 years. You've got a stable income. Great. And I think that's where most of this comes from is it's the association or death by association that a client has. If you've been working with them for a long period of time, they have some sort of attachment to the end result. They want to go to the gym 3 days a week, so they associate that with you holding them accountable. They want to follow their nutrition more often than not, so they think that it's you holding them accountable to do those things. And in those scenarios, it is. But look at it this way: if you're not planning on spending fucking £100 a session for 3 days a week, or £250, £300 a month for the next 5 years, we need a different option. And that's what really set me differently when I was first starting this kind of journey of personal training and online coaching. I didn't want to see clients with me for 2, 3, 4 years unless they had a competition goal or a photo shoot goal or a competitive element or a long-term muscle building thing. But for bog standard, people just want to lose 5 to 10 kilos and never put it back on again. I didn't really see the point in people staying with you for 3, 5 years. Now let me break down why that's the case. Because one element psychologically, it's a codependency. You shouldn't rely on anybody else to do things that you should be wanting to do. Obviously it helps sometimes, and maybe at the start of a journey, accountability is really important, but maybe after a while, maybe you should turn it to responsibility. Because ultimately what accountability is you practicing something you find hard enough times to make it easy. And when it's easy, you don't need the accountability to do those things. So accountability is something that has to be transferred into responsibility. Otherwise, it's just someone else reminding you to do something and you doing it. Let me break it down. Client says to me, I'm just not motivated or I'm just not holding myself accountable. Can you message me every day to make sure I go to the gym? And at the beginning, I might do that. I might message them and say, hey, cool, make sure you get your gym session in today. But 4 months in, they shouldn't need me to remind them because they've practiced it enough to develop a habit. But if they're still wanting me to hold them accountable, I need to frame it like this. If your kid's at school and they need you to pick them up at 4 p.m, do you need motivation or accountability to go and pick up your kids? No, because there's a high degree of benefit. The kids don't get lost. And there's a high degree of pain if that doesn't happen. You don't get the kids, they disappear and never have kids again. That's a high degree of pain. That's a really bad association. So you go and pick them up. Shadow of a doubt, you make sure you're there, you make sure you're on time. If you're stuck in traffic, fair enough, but you make sure you're on time. So in some parts of our life, we don't need accountability. And in other parts of our life, we need to start with accountability. And over time, it turns into a very similar thing to the responsibility of picking up your kids from school. Because you understand the benefits and you understand what happens if you don't do it. And then the skill element in it when it comes to learning something new. So I'm all for accountability when you first start on something that you really struggle with. But after a point, there has to be you doing it for you. So we go against the common norms when it comes to this type of stuff because we just don't agree with that you should be working with a coach for 3, 5, 7 years. Because when you break it down, everything's a skill. It's a skill acquisition. If you want to learn Spanish, it's skills of writing the names, reading the names, learning the tonality, learning the little intricacies in the alphabets, etc. And then once you have it, unless you want to learn more and more and more words, you have the base level, which will never leave you unless you with practice, right? The reason why people forget Spanish is not because they forgot it and they need to have coaching again or have like tuition again. They just need to remind themselves of what they were doing by repetition. And with health and fitness, and because nutrition is a daily thing because you have to eat to stay alive, there is always this repetitive element. So it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere, the choices around food or eating. They're going to be there until you die. Start when you're conscious about it all the way to your death. You're always going to be conscious around the food choices. So it's repetitive by nature anyway. Whereas Spanish, if you're in England and you don't meet anyone Spanish for 6 months, you're probably not going to speak Spanish unless you go proactively out your way, which means that you lose some of the words because you're not honing in that repetitive skill. Whereas health and fitness, you are eating every day, you're drinking water, you're going to do that repetitively anyway. So why would you need a refresher or someone to constantly remind you? So we know that personal trainers and online coaches who keep their clients 3, 5, 7 years are doing it from a benefit of themselves, and they're feeding into the insecurities of their clients to not leave them because they feel like they can't. Because this thing called codependency, which is a Gen Pop client has attached the coach as the reason why they achieved their goal. Oh, Nathan, I couldn't have done this without you. Oh, it's been amazing. We helped me drop 10 kilos, or you made me drop 10 kilos. So they have an association with a person about a particular thing. Now, I didn't do anything special. I didn't create the attachment. The results created the attachment, right? So like I give you something to do, you did it, a result happened. And therefore you then said, oh, Nathan gave me this thing, I did this thing, and then wow, it happened. So there's an attachment, which is he gave me something, he's doing something for me, I'm doing something for myself, and then boom, it's happened. Now, over time, those attachments or like attachment to a specific person can become something called codependency, where you codependently or you're dependent on that person to do this particular things that you need to do. And that's where those 3, 6, 7 years of coaching or personal training becomes ever present, because she's codependent on a specific element of the journey. So you're codependent with a personal trainer to go to the gym 3 times a week, because if you didn't do it, you wouldn't go to the gym 3 times a week. And then you're codependent on an online coach to do a weekly check-in, because if you don't do the weekly check-in, you're not going to hold yourself accountable over the weekend to do your nutrition to the way that you should do. And that's where the codependency starts. And then, for example, like when we do it, so we have, coaching is coaching. You will over time potentially create some codependencies because you're putting an input in, a client's putting an input in, and then something magical is happening. Whereas when we teach our clients to do it without us, because we have a very, very clear statement, 6 phases to forever, and then you get kicked out because you need to do it by yourself in the future. When we opt to kick people out and we're going through that path of teaching them the skills to be able to do it by themselves, they are then getting kicked out on a specific date, and they become apprehensive because they've created that attachment to, I don't know if I can do it by myself. We've done this together. It's been great. I've done this process and it's working right now. Why would we not just keep it? And then when we kick them out and they become apprehensive, they realize that they can stand on their own 2 feet. And one biggest element of being able to do this by yourself in the future, and why we're so massive on making sure that you can stay in shape by yourself for 20 years, is that you just haven't trusted yourself and have a big enough bank of evidence over time to know that you can do it by yourself and you can trust yourself. Major example of this is like when you're struggling to just eat just one biscuit and you eat a pack of biscuits. The trust of having a pack of digestive biscuits in your cupboard and having them there could be overwhelming for you, could be something that you don't want to do because you don't trust yourself just to have one. And therefore then you remove those things and don't have them at all. But when you undergo like a health and fitness change and the coaching is good and you get all these skills of how to manage nutrition socially and how to manage nutrition on a day-to-day basis, how to do training, how to do exercise, how to wrap that up in your lifestyle, how to build a routine, all these things, you're not the same person that you used to be. However, the psychological traits are still the same. And that's why when you're looking at the next 20 years, you ultimately we have to step away. So a coach has to step away. There's no other way that this happens, by the way. Like even if people tell you, oh yeah, you can still be on your own, but we'll do your training on nutrition. It's like, no, the coach has to step away to allow the client to create their own trust with themselves. because the relationship that they have with themselves is the most important. And if they can't trust themselves to go to the gym 3 days a week, or work out why they're not going and then solve that, or work out why they've been a bit lax on nutrition and solve that, then they're always going to be in this revolving door of needing somebody's input to do the things that they need to do. Because once I learned that I was ultimately responsible for my own decisions, I ultimately learned that I had no one else to fall back on. If I made a nutrition decision, if I didn't go to the gym, I would have to suffer the consequences. And because you have a coach in that process, sometimes the responsibility is shared, because they could be like, oh, we'll try a different strategy, or no, I didn't give you clear enough instructions, or the client goes, oh, I thought you were going to do this for me, I thought it was going to work better. Once there's that shared responsibility, it's hard to ultimately take the full brunt of trust in yourself, because you've had someone to help you along the process. And if we're looking at the next 20 years, we're looking at like what you want to be able to do. You should be able to, because it's a skill-based thing, to stay in shape, have your weight managed, and learn the skills that it takes. Because it's like, if you want to get fat, there's a process for that. If you want to get in shape, there's a process for that. If you want to maintain your weight, there's a process for that. So it's a process of skill-based development stuff. So once you learn those skills and then the coach steps away, the trust in yourself becomes higher, the responsibility becomes higher, and because you've made all those things habits beforehand, they're easier to do than when they first started. All you have to do on top of those skills and the responsibility is have the education to know what to do when. And we specifically will go through periods of like when we're helping people maintain their weight forever, and we're going through that phase of like, you've got your diet over here, we do that, we've done like a maintenance phase, and then when we're preparing you to leave, we'll teach you what to do if you want to go back into a diet, what to do if you've gained a few extra pounds, what to do with the training if this happens, what to do with your exercise, what to do when you're sick, what to do when you've got holidays, etc., what to do when you want to change of routine, etc. So you have the bank of information now, plus the trust in yourself to do those things. Then that's a recipe for success, because you've got the trust, you've got the education, you've got the skills, and all you need to do is utilize those things to manage it by yourself. And you just build up that trust, you build up the repetition, and over time you've now developed new habits, new skills, new ability to do it by yourself, and you're making on-the-fly decisions without even you realizing, because you've got the education, the skill set, etc. So it's really important that you look at and viewpoint health and fitness as a one-stop shop, not a ongoing thing. Now, there will be parts of the health and fitness thing that will be ongoing. So for example, like if you really enjoy training, there will be an element of like new training programs and specialized parts of like working on your chest, or working on your back, or working on your legs, or running a longer distance, or deadlifting more, or strength building more. That's absolutely fine. They're like expertise, right? You don't want to go to university to study program design to then have to then write programs for yourself. That would be, you'd be a PT by then. There's only, in my opinion, there's only one expertise part of health and fitness after you've learned the skills of fat loss, maintenance, and weight stabilization, and that is the training side of things, because it is more technical. It is more understanding science, understanding biology, and understanding biomechanics, and understanding periodization of training programs and what exercise needs to go after which one. And I think that's the only part of the health and fitness journey that you should probably get help with later down your line, 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years. But from a program perspective, not from a PT perspective where you're doing the sessions, or you're doing nutrition with somebody, or you're doing accountability. All those things should have gone away, and the only thing that you should require a coach for, if you require that, is to attain a particular training goal. You shouldn't need someone to wipe your ass and hold you to nutrition strategies 2 or 3 years in. So I've kind of explained my rationale behind that. Hopefully you see the benefit. Now, most people will think, well, what skills do I need to acquire to make sure that I do it by myself in the future? And it comes down to 3 to 4 things. One is like, how do you manage self-accountability? So how do you turn accountability from someone else into responsibility, into self-accountability? And that will be down to how frequent you're checking your body weight, how frequent you're checking in with yourself on how you're enjoying life, and how you're enjoying your training, and where your body weight sits, and do we have a goal for the next couple of months, and reevaluating your goals, reevaluating where your body weight is and how you like it, and whether you want to improve on it or you're happy to keep it where it's that stick or twist type of thing. And it's about like, secondly, it's about making sure that you have the right strategy for your lifestyle. So most people go on diets, and the diets are not in their lifestyle. They've changed the whole lifestyle to fit into a diet, and then when they come out of a diet, this is the whole yo-yo dieting thing, but they end up going on diets that are not sustainable because it's not within the lifestyle, as opposed to diet that's in their lifestyle. If you found a diet that is within your lifestyle and you are happily going out for social events and you're happily eating out and you're not dieting during the week to have a massive fuck off meal at the evening, you're managing your weight within like a 2 to 3 kilo range for upwards of 6 months, if you're enjoying your life and you're not having any food associations that are negative, like you can't have biscuits in the cupboard and can't have one of them, that's a red flag for me, for someone that hasn't learned the skills of maintenance yet. Or you can't have a certain food in your house because you'll eat it all. That's a red flag. That means, further down the line, you're going to struggle with that later. And learning those eating behaviors are going to be super critical for your long-term maintenance. Because if you can't have biscuits in the house at least once and you'd eat them all, you're not going to have biscuits in your house for the next 20 years. Or generally what happens is people do have biscuits because they got kids, and then they're death by 1,000 cuts. One day they'll have 6 biscuits and not do anything from a nutrition perspective around it. Then the other day they'll have more and more and more, and then before you know it, they're 3 or 5 kilos up, and then they're unhappy again, having to diet again. So it's about learning those eating behaviors that you've probably built up over time. That's what needs to be learned in the maintenance phase to make sure that you can do it by yourself in the future, because that's where you need to develop that skill. And the last thing is going to be making sure that your exercise and the movement that you want to do is forever. If you can have an exercise goal, like the steps or the walking that you enjoy, and then you can have like an exercise goal, whether it's resistance training, whether that's sport, whether that's yoga or Pilates, that has some fun end element to it, but it can never be completed. Like it's never just like, I'll go to the gym and I completed it. If you can have a forever goal where you can constantly attaining to do more and get better with that and do things differently, then that's going to be span the test of time over 20 years. It's why most people like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because you can't complete it. You can't win Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You learn a new skill, then you learn a new technique, and then an armbar, and then how to get on people's backs, or how to tap them out, or how to wrestle them to the ground. There's always a next step, and there's always someone bigger than you and better than you that you learn from and you go through. And I don't think enough people have that long-term goal or like a forever goal. And I'm going through it at the moment. Like I've been weight training for 15 years since I was 15, and I'm just bored of it, if I'm being honest. I've gone through periods where I've built loads of muscle, took it really, really seriously. I've gone through periods where I did it for aesthetics and the way I looked and wanted to look bigger and better. Some months I'd done strength training and making sure that I get stronger over time. But I'm just tapped out. 15 years of doing one thing. And this is the lesson that I'm giving to you. Is like, if you find resistance training in your 30s and 40s, great. But think about when you're 60, what you're going to be doing then. And I always think about that. I'm like, right, I'm bored of resistance training when I'm 30. If I'm bored of it now and I'm not going, what am I going to do in 30 years' time when I'm 60, when I'm osteoporotic, more than actually I'm with my knee replacement, and I need to be active more than ever then? What am I going to be doing? And that's why I'm in the process of making sure that whatever I'm doing, I really enjoy. I really enjoy sports. I have the limitation of my knee at the moment, so I'm making sure I go and fix that so that I can go and do things I love, that I can go and do when I'm 40, 50 and 60. Because 15 years of one thing only leads to boredom. Like, think of something you've done 3 times a week for the last 15 years. I'll show you something that you're relatively bored with. It's going to be very similar. So I definitely would encourage you to think outside of the box when it comes to, resistance training is great and I love it, and I think it's great benefits for everybody. But when you're looking at the goal of next 20 years, 30 years, is that what you're going to be doing in 30 years' time, or are you going to have a different approach? And tackling both of those are going to be really, really important. So anyway, brief synopsis. You have to move out of a coaching program. You have to be able to do things in the future for yourself, because if you are codependent on someone else, if you are waiting for someone else to hold you accountable, there's no trust and no responsibility in yourself to do those things. Nothing about this health and fitness game is something that you need someone else for. Once you've learned the skills, the education, and you've learned the benefits and the cost of not doing them. And then it's up to you to treat it like everything else in your life, where you shouldn't need motivation for, you shouldn't need accountability for, because it's on you if you want to do them. And if you don't want to do them, you have to bear the costs. And if the costs of weight gain, potential type 2 diabetes, obesity, high injury rates, joints that are osteoporotic, and then all the psychological things that come with not having a break away from work, and the cognitive function you get from training and eating right, if the cost of that aren't anything to motivate you, then that's okay, but you have to bear the costs. And whatever you lie in the bed that you make, or whatever you make, whatever the fucking quote is. But at some point in some time, you will have to take responsibility for the decisions that you make, from a positive and a negative. And if you don't want to bear the costs, then you better take the action. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to staying in shape forever, and why coaching has to be removed in order for you to stay in shape forever, is that you have to take responsibility for your actions daily, with the new education that you've learned within the coaching, within the new habits that you've got, because you're not the person you used to be, because you've gone through a process of habit building, structuring your days, more education, more practice, mindset around food and eating has completely changed. You're not the person you were, so the actions that you take going forwards will be different than the ones that are previous. So you almost have to trust yourself with the newfound habits, newfound education, newfound skill development, to then be able to take this into the future without having the bottleneck of thinking that it's the coach that's making me do this. Because you have the power, you just haven't had it previously, to be accountable for yourself. You've had it in other areas of your life. You've probably been accountable at work. Yeah, my bad, I haven't done that. Or yeah, I took responsibility for that and I did it. You've probably had accountability in work where you've took that, but you haven't transferred that over to your health and fitness journey yet. And it's accountability and responsibility is ever present. It doesn't have any barriers, because it's ultimately your life in every area. So you just need to transfer some of the skills that you probably have in other areas of your life with this newfound education, newfound skills, to be able to grow and do it by yourself in the future without the need of someone else. You don't want a crutch for the next 20 years, either a coach, a specific person, an accountability buddy. You don't want a crutch to getting in the way of you doing the things that you need to do by yourself, because ultimately you need to take that responsibility, and you can't blame it on anyone else at that moment in time. And ultimately that comes with the most amount of power. If you can say you did it, you went through a coaching program, and now you're good by yourself and you can manage it, the trust that you have in yourself, the people that we have that leave Autonomy after going through and trusting themselves have now the most self-belief in themselves, because they've proven to themselves that they can do something that they once thought was impossible. And that's the role of a coach, to step away to allow that to happen. Otherwise, the coach just gets in the middle of codependency, and they never fully feel autonomous with their decision making. And that's why, in a nutshell, a coach has to step away, and for you to be able to trust yourself and have that responsibility with the newfound habits, skills and techniques and education that you have. And that's why it's so powerful. Peace.